everyone. For this Classic Movie Monday, I thought it would be interesting to not discuss one film or even two films, but instead a ton of films, a franchise as they usually like to call them. And this franchise in particular that I want to briefly discuss is the Bond franchise, the James Bond franchise. Yes, we have all been accustomed to James Bond. Have you watched the recent films that have come out or the ones that have maintained themselves throughout the years? The Bond franchise, I think, holds to this classic standard because it is something that a lot of people are aware of and a lot of people come back to and really enjoy and find to offer a lot of value and a good source of entertainment when it comes to action, story, and particular James Bond. Now, what is it about James Bond that people like? In particular, I guess you could say, what do males like about James Bond? Males, I think, like the fact that James Bond has a mission. He has a goal always within each film that he stars in. There's always a task that needs to be accomplished. There is always a villain or villains to have him go up against. There is always something that needs to be achieved. And I think that's something that really can identify with both male and female, but I think on a more general level, I think that is the one thing that I think a lot of male audiences find appealing about James Bond. Also, James Bond is fairly suave. He's a very sophisticated character. He's always intelligent. He's always quick thinking, and he can get out of any situation that he's in or get into any situation that he wants to, and he ultimately always ends up triumphing. And even if he gets injured or harmed, there's always some form of him resurrecting. Now, it can be argued that the Bond character has changed over the years. If you see Sean Connery playing James Bond, it's a lot different than Daniel Craig playing James Bond or Pierce Brosnan playing James Bond. The actors offer something different. For example, Sean Connery is very charming, always kind of smiling and having this very kind of go-lucky attitude with what he's accomplishing, what he's doing, because he has that confidence and that ability to just be out in the open and take whatever circumstances are thrown at him. With Daniel Craig, he's a lot darker Bond. He doesn't smile a whole lot. He has a certain sense of suave, like Sean Connery does, but he goes through a lot of dark patches, and there's a lot of breaking down that happens to him as he's really playing the character. You know, he really shows James Bond in this very vulnerable state. Unlike the more earlier Bonds, which were more focused in on trying to have a sense of fantasy, where things were a little bit more, I guess, easier, or looked a lot easier. And there is this sense of having a power with that, and I think that's what initially drew people to enjoying James Bond. And now we have something that's evolved and it's a little bit different, and people I guess argue whether or not it's more complex, but I still think that the whole franchise in itself has stayed true to the ideas of James Bond. Again, there are some duds within the Bond franchise. I'm not going to say that all of them are classics, but I'd say a good chunk of them do hold to that kind of classic standard because the actors do a good performance. There are a lot of good effects, and there's a good story and plot to back everything up. But I think that James Bond sort of maintains that classic element because he is the sort of first real spy that people became really aware of, and it's something that a lot of people grew up with, and that a lot of people sort of look up to and aspire to be. A lot of people kind of see themselves as James Bond, so to speak. And obviously having nice cars and cool gadgets and things like that, those are always good perks to have. And I think it's something that really enhances the franchise. And just the fact that even though it really focuses on the same things throughout each film, there's always a different story, a different task, a different scenario, and sometimes even a different Bond playing the role. So I think there is a lot of variety within the series that I think people can find some enjoyment from. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. But I think they do hold to this classic standard because they were, especially the earlier ones, were good filmmaking, and they did stand out for how well executed they were, for their effects, and the fact that they managed to have this long-running franchise. And it probably is the most longest-running franchise, I think, out there. I don't think there's any other franchise that comes close to James Bond, and it's still going strong, I think. I think they still want to make some more of these films. I think some people would argue as to whether or not the franchise has gone a little bit more down in quality compared to the more original James Bond films, but I will say it's something that is going to stay for a while and is going to remain really relevant throughout people's movie libraries, because these films have created this huge amount of praise and have, as a result, been not only put on a high pedestal, but put on a high pedestal for a good variety of reasons. And I think, obviously, one being, like I've said before, the fact that we have a character like James Bond to sort of emulate. The fact that we have effects that are really well done and really enhance the action sequences. That we have these very interesting areas in which James Bond travels to. Those things, I think, can be very appealing for people. Just the fact that, it's not just a spy film. It's also a film about travel and exploration. And the fact that there are these good stories and plots to sort of carry the weight of each Bond film. Again, some of them are not as good as others, I think, but overall I think they hold, in a more general sense, a classic standard, and I think they will go down as one of the greats out of all of movie franchises, just because of how a lot of them were fairly successful and still highly rated. The fact that they have been not only around for so long, but have been still passed along and still continuing on. So it's only, I think, fair to put these films in this classic category and label this franchise as one that will, I think, go in history books when it comes to filmmaking, for sure. But I think, though, that's really all ultimately I can say about the Bond franchise. I'm sure everybody has their favorite Bond film, or the one that they identify with the most. And I think that's what's good about this franchise is that, again, there's a lot of variety of stories, adventures, and a variety of James Bonds, because we had more than one James Bond. What I mean by James Bond is I mean actor, and again, you know, the actors usually do something different than what the other actors do with the characters. So there is that sense of variety, and I think that's really what's allowed the series to thrive and keep itself going. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye.